I used to think that after 25 years of marriage, there wasn't a single thing left to surprise me about my husband, Michael. But one night, I realized I didn't know him at all. It started with a sound, a faint ping from his phone that woke me up at 2:17 a.m. Michael was in the shower. He always took long showers when he couldn't sleep. That night, the sound echoed like a warning in the quiet of our bedroom. And when I reached for his phone on instinct, something I'd never done before, that one message changed everything. It was from a contact saved as D. It read, "You don't have to pretend anymore. She'll be gone soon." For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. Gone? Who was she? Me? I stared at the message, heart pounding, waiting for my mind to make sense of it. Maybe D was a coworker, or maybe it was some dumb inside joke. But something deep inside me, that quiet intuition women get when something's wrong, whispered that this was different. I remember setting the phone back exactly how I found it, hands trembling, before lying down and pretending to sleep. When Michael came out of the bathroom, steam following him, he looked peaceful, almost relieved. He kissed my forehead softly and whispered, "You're still awake?" I mumbled, just couldn't sleep. But inside, I was screaming. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, the usual morning routine, though every sound felt sharper, every word heavier. Michael hummed as he read the paper, completely unaware that I was watching him like a stranger. I noticed things I'd never paid attention to before. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. The way he kept his phone close, even taking it to the bathroom, which he'd never done before. By lunchtime, the word "gone" kept echoing in my head. Gone. Like he was planning something, or someone else was. That evening, while he was out meeting a client, I sat at our kitchen table staring at his old iPad, the one synced to his phone. He thought he'd disabled everything, years ago. But when I opened the Messages app, there it was, the same thread with D. My fingers shook as I scrolled. D. She still doesn't know. Michael. No, not yet, but soon. D. You're sure you'll get the insurance in time? Michael. Already filed. Once it's approved, we can finally move on. Insurance. Move on. It felt like someone had ripped the floor out from under me. That was the night I realized my husband might not just be cheating. He might be planning something far worse. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd look at him across the dinner table and feel this cold fear crawl up my spine. Every time he smiled, I wondered, is this the same man who held me when my mother died? The man who promised me forever? I decided to test him. On Friday morning, I told him I had a doctor's appointment in the city. In truth, I parked a few blocks away from his office and watched him from my car. At 11:30 a.m., a woman in a red coat walked up to him outside the cafe across the street. She was younger, maybe early 30s, tall, polished, the kind of woman who looks like she never forgets lipstick. Michael hugged her. Not a friendly hug, a long one, a familiar one. I watched them sit, talk, laugh, and then she placed her hand over his, and I saw it, the way he didn't pull away. That was my husband, and I was watching him give someone else the look he used to give me. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine, then another. I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head. Men show you who they are in the quiet moments, Linda. She was right, but I hadn't listened. At around 6 p.m., he walked in, smiling, like nothing had happened. "Hey, honey," he said, kissing my cheek. "How was the appointment?" "It was fine," I replied softly, "just tired." He looked at me, really looked at me, and for a second I thought he could see right through me. All the doubt, the pain, the rage boiling underneath. But then he smiled again and said, "You should rest." That night, while he slept, I opened my laptop. And I started digging. What I found next didn't just break my heart, it made me question every single year we'd spent together. The emails, the financial documents, everything told a story I wish I could unread. 2 months earlier, Michael had increased my life insurance policy, quietly, without even mentioning it to me. And the beneficiary changed from our son, Adam, to himself. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling this cold wave of realization crash over me. This wasn't about love anymore. This was survival. I printed the documents and hid them in a folder behind the washing machine, the one place I knew he'd never look. Then I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the man I once trusted more than anyone in the world. And I thought to myself, how do you sleep so peacefully when you're planning something so dark? I didn't have an answer, but I knew I had to find one, because if I was right, I didn't have much time. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's face, calm, familiar, gentle, and then the words from that message flashing behind him. "She'll be gone soon." By morning, my pillow was damp. Not just from tears, but from something heavier. The weight of knowing that the man who shared my life might be planning to end it. Still, I couldn't confront him. Not yet. Because if I was right, I needed proof. And if I was wrong, if somehow I had misunderstood everything, I'd destroy a marriage that had already been limping for years. But I couldn't pretend anymore. Something in me shifted that morning. The woman who once trusted him unconditionally, she was gone. That afternoon, I called my son, Adam. He's 24, just started his new job in Chicago, full of life, full of plans. I didn't want to worry him, but I needed to hear his voice. "Hey, Mom," he said cheerfully. "You sound tired. Everything okay?" I swallowed hard. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just missing you, that's all." "Aw, Mom," he said, laughing. "You're not getting all sentimental on me again, are you?" "Maybe I am," I said softly. "Just promise me something, okay?" "Sure." "No matter what happens, don't ever lose your kindness. It's your best quality." There was silence. Then, softly, "You're scaring me a little." I laughed it off, changed the subject, and hung up. But as soon as I did, I burst into tears, because part of me wondered if that might have been the last time he'd hear my voice. That's when I decided, if Michael was hiding something, I'd uncover every single secret before he had the chance to hurt me. The next few days, I became someone else. Quiet, observant, calculating. I followed his patterns, his routines. When he said he was working late, I checked the car mileage. When he left his briefcase unattended, I snapped quick photos of whatever papers I could see inside. And then, on Thursday evening, I followed him. He left the house around 6:40 p.m., said he had a meeting with a client downtown. I waited 10 minutes, then drove after him, keeping distance. My hands were shaking so badly on the steering wheel, I had to remind myself to breathe. He didn't go downtown. He went to a small house on the edge of town, tucked behind a row of sycamores. A red car was already parked outside, the same red coat woman I'd seen at the cafe. I parked across the street and watched through the windshield. Michael knocked once. The woman opened the door and pulled him inside. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at that house. Time lost meaning. The streetlights came on, the night deepened, and still I stayed, numb, frozen, listening to my own heart break in silence. Finally, around 9 p.m., he came out. He stood at the door for a long moment, said something I couldn't hear, then kissed her. That was it, the final confirmation. He wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he was building a whole new life, maybe even planning mine to end. When I got home, I couldn't even cry anymore. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the photographs on the mantle, our wedding picture, Adam's graduation, the summer trip to Lake Michigan. All lies now, I thought. Every smile, every promise. I don't know how long I sat like that. Maybe hours. At some point, the front door opened. "Linda?" he called softly. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" I turned slowly, forcing a tired smile. "Just thinking." He chuckled nervously. "That's dangerous." "I know. I was just remembering our honeymoon. Do you remember that storm in Charleston?" He blinked, surprised. "Yeah, of course I do." I nodded. "You held me the whole night. Said you'd never let anything bad happen to me." He smiled faintly. "And I meant it." I looked at him then. Really looked. And I realized I could act too. If he could pretend to love me, I could pretend to trust him. Because from that night on, I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was the woman who was going to catch him before he destroyed me. The next morning, I started gathering evidence. I took photos of the text messages, the insurance papers, and even the house address where I'd followed him. I stored everything on a flash drive and hid it inside a hollow candle jar in the living room. One of those decorative ones no one ever lights. I even wrote a letter to Adam, sealed it, and placed it in my dresser. If something happened to me, I wanted him to know the truth. For a few days, I managed to keep up the act. Michael thought everything was fine. He even seemed lighter, happier, as if my silence was a relief to him. Then, one night at dinner, he said something that made my skin crawl. He poured me a glass of wine, red, my favorite, and said, "To new beginnings." I forced a smile. "What kind of beginnings?" He grinned. "Oh, you'll see soon enough." The way he said it, calm, confident, sent a chill down my spine. Later that evening, I poured the rest of that wine down the sink, and when I saw the faint residue swirling down the drain, I realized something horrifying. He never drank from his own glass, just mine. That was the moment I stopped being afraid, because fear was what he wanted. Now I was angry, and anger made me careful. The next day, I took the wine glass to a friend, Marlene, who worked at a local pharmacy. I told her I wanted to test it, for fun, pretending I was writing a mystery story. She laughed but agreed to check for anything unusual. 2 days later, she called. "Linda," she said slowly, "there's something in that wine residue. It's not normal." My knees went weak. "What do you mean?" "I don't want to scare you, but it looks like traces of a sedative, strong enough to make someone sleep for hours, maybe longer." The room spun. I sat down, gripping the edge of the counter, trying to process her words. Sedatives. In my drink. That night, I lay beside Michael again, watching him breathe. The same man who once brought me soup when I had the flu. The same man who danced with me barefoot in our kitchen. The same man who might be slowly poisoning me. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a countdown. I knew what I had to do. If I stayed silent, I'd end up another sad headline. Wife dies unexpectedly. But if I confronted him too early, he'd know I was onto him, and that could be even more dangerous. So I decided to play the long game. That weekend, Michael suggested we take a drive to the lake. Just to relax, he said, smiling the same way he used to when he surprised me with flowers. The idea of being alone with him, near deep water, made my stomach twist, but I agreed, because if he thought I was still naive, still trusting, that was my best defense. The morning of the trip, I packed carefully. bottled water I sealed myself, snacks I'd made the night before, and that flash drive with all the evidence, tucked deep inside my purse. Michael whistled as he packed the trunk, light and carefree. "Haven't been out here in a while," he said, pulling out of the driveway. "It'll be nice to breathe." I forced a smile. "Yeah, just like old times." He reached over, squeezed my hand, and I flinched before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked toward me, sharp, questioning. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired," I murmured, staring out the window. "Didn't sleep much." He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. The drive to Lake Harmony took 2 hours. The road curved through stretches of pine trees, sunlight flickering through the branches. For years, this drive had been our peace. We'd go every summer, picnic by the water, talk about dreams. But this time it felt like a road to nowhere. When we arrived, Michael parked near a secluded dock. The air was quiet except for the soft lapping of waves. "Remember this spot?" he asked, stepping out. "Of course," I said. "You proposed here." He smiled. "Seems like a lifetime ago." "It was," I whispered. As he unpacked the picnic basket, I noticed something inside. A new bottle of wine, unopened, with 2 glasses. "Thought you might like this," he said cheerfully, holding it up. "Your favorite, Merlot." My pulse quickened. The same wine. The same kind he'd poured before. I forced a laugh. "You're really spoiling me lately." "Just trying to make things right," he said softly, opening the bottle. "We've both been under stress." He poured 2 glasses, then handed me one. I took it, smiling, pretending, but I didn't drink. I set it down beside me on the blanket. He watched me for a second, then looked away. "Linda, you know I love you, right?" I nodded slowly. "I thought I did." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I met his eyes. "It means I'm not as blind as you think." His face changed, just slightly, like a shadow passed over it. "Linda, you're scaring me," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "Am I? Because lately I've been feeling like the one in danger." For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy, electric. Then he laughed, too loud, too forced. "You've been watching too many crime shows." "Maybe," I said softly. "Or maybe I've just been paying attention." I stood up, brushing the sand from my hands. "You know what's funny, Michael? You're terrible at hiding things." His jaw tightened. "What things?" "Messages? Insurance changes? Wine bottles?" His eyes darted to the glass near my feet. And in that instant, I knew I was right. The man I'd loved for 25 years wasn't confused or guilty. He was caught. He stood slowly, his posture changing, no longer relaxed, no longer gentle. "Linda," he said carefully, "you've misunderstood everything." "Then explain it," I said. My voice was steady, almost frighteningly calm. "Explain the messages, the woman in the red coat, the insurance." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Michael? Because from where I stand, it looks like you were planning a future without me." He stepped closer. "I was trying to fix things." "By drugging me?" I snapped. He froze. The world seemed to stop for a second. Even the water fell silent. I could see it in his eyes. Panic, guilt, fear, all blending into one cold truth. He whispered, "Where did you hear that?" "I don't need to hear it. I can taste it." He reached out suddenly, maybe to grab my arm, maybe to plead. I didn't wait to find out. I stepped back, my heart racing, my hand clutching my purse, where the flash drive sat like a loaded weapon. "Don't. If you take one more step, I swear I'll scream." He stopped, breathing hard. And then, just like that, he smiled again. Soft, almost sad. "You were always dramatic. You think you know everything, but you don't." He turned away, staring out at the lake. "You should have trusted me." I stared at his back, wondering if I was standing next to a murderer or a man so broken he'd lost himself. But either way, I knew one thing. I couldn't stay married to him. Not after this. That night, I checked into a small motel outside town. I told him I was visiting an old friend. He didn't ask questions. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he was planning his next move. I didn't sleep. Instead, I typed everything into a document: dates, times, evidence. Then I emailed copies to myself and my sister in Arizona, just in case something happened to me. But the next morning, something did happen. Something that made me realize this story wasn't over yet. Not even close. I woke up to a message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have gone through his phone. No name, no signature, just those words. My blood ran cold. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the screen, heart hammering. Whoever sent that, they knew everything. Was it the woman in the red coat? Was she part of it? Or was it Michael himself testing me? I didn't reply. I packed my things, paid the bill in cash, and drove straight to the police station. When I showed them the messages and documents, the officer, a kind-eyed woman named Detective Harris, listened quietly. Then she said, "Mrs. Turner, I'm glad you came in, because we've been watching your husband for a while." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer. "We can't share details yet, but he's not just cheating. There's more. Something much bigger." I blinked. Bigger than trying to kill his wife? She sighed. "Let's just say he's in deep. And you might have saved your own life by coming in today." I drove home that night with my heart in my throat. The house was dark, empty. For a moment, I thought he might be gone, maybe even arrested. But when I turned on the light, there he was. Sitting in the living room. Calm. Waiting. He was sitting in the living room, calm and waiting, like a man who had all the time in the world. The lamp beside him cast a soft amber glow across his face. For a fleeting second, he almost looked like the man I'd married, tired from work, waiting for me to come home. But then he smiled, and that smile told me everything I needed to know. "Long day?" he asked. His voice was steady, casual, too casual. I swallowed, forcing my keys to stay still in my trembling hand. "Yeah, drove out to see a friend." He nodded. "So I heard." The words hit me like a stone. I froze. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his tone suddenly lower. "You shouldn't have gone to the police, Linda." My heart stopped. I hadn't told a soul, not even Adam. "Michael, how did you—" "You really think they wouldn't tell me? I have friends everywhere." For the first time, I realized how little I actually knew about the people Michael worked with. His clients, his partners, the mysterious phone calls late at night. I had been living with a stranger, and now that stranger knew I had betrayed him. He stood up slowly, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You've made this harder than it needed to be," he said. I stepped back, gripping the strap of my purse where my phone was hidden. "I know everything," I said, my voice trembling but firm. The messages, the insurance, the wine. You think I'm stupid, but I'm not. He smiled again, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. You always had a flair for drama. Then tell me I'm wrong, I demanded. He didn't. He just stared at me, quiet, calculating. You wouldn't understand. You were never supposed to find out like this. I laughed bitterly. Find out what, Michael? That my husband's been planning my death? He stepped closer. You're overreacting. Then what was in the wine? His silence was louder than any answer. I backed toward the hallway, keeping my eyes on him. I've already given everything to someone, I lied. If anything happens to me, they'll know. He tilted his head, studying me. You're lying. Try me. For a long, awful second, neither of us moved. Then, to my surprise, he sighed and sat back down. You always were smarter than you looked, he said quietly. I'll give you that. My throat went dry. What do you want from me? Nothing, he said, eyes fixed on the floor. It's already done. Done? He looked up. You've ruined everything. I didn't know what he meant until I heard it, the faint sound of tires crunching on gravel outside. Headlights flashed through the window. Michael stood. You shouldn't have done that, he whispered, voice trembling now. Before I could ask, the front door burst open. 2 officers stepped inside, guns drawn. Michael Turner, you're under arrest. I gasped. Arrest? For what? Detective Harris stepped forward, her eyes meeting mine. Mrs. Turner, are you safe? I nodded, barely. My whole body was shaking. They cuffed him and let him out, his voice echoing through the hallway. You'll regret this, Linda. You'll regret everything. The door slammed behind them, leaving only silence. I thought that was the end of it. But the truth had layers I hadn't even begun to uncover. The next morning, Detective Harris came by to take my full statement. As we sat in the kitchen, she flipped through a folder. Your husband wasn't just planning to harm you, she said quietly. He was working with someone, a woman named Dana Collins. Dana, I whispered, the woman in the red coat. Harris nodded. They've been together for over a year. They opened a joint bank account under fake names, filed false claims, and planned to collect the payout from your policy. We found text messages, emails, even flight reservations under their aliases. I stared at her, numb. He was going to leave the country? Yes, she said, with the money from your life insurance. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to breathe. How long will he be in jail? For now, he's in custody, but cases like this take time. Time. That word felt heavy, too heavy, because time was all I'd given him. 25 years of it. That night, I sat on the porch with the blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The house felt empty in a way it never had before. Quiet, yes, but also safer. Still, the silence carried ghosts, laughter from long-gone dinners, his voice calling my name from down the hall, the echo of a marriage that had never been real. I thought about the girl I'd been when I met him, bright-eyed, hopeful, believing that love was enough to fix anything. And I thought about the woman I was now, scarred, yes, but alive. Alive. But life after betrayal isn't simple, because sometimes even when the danger is gone, the fear stays. Weeks passed. I started therapy. Adam came home for a visit, and when I finally told him everything, he cried. Not just for me, but for the father he thought he knew. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said, hugging me tight. Don't be, I whispered. We both survived him. That's enough. But even then, a part of me couldn't rest. I kept wondering, how much of Michael's darkness had I missed? What other secrets had been buried beneath our perfect little life? Then, one morning, as I sorted through old boxes in the garage, I found a small wooden chest I didn't recognize. It was tucked behind his old tools, sealed with tape. Inside were papers, business cards, receipts, photographs, and one envelope addressed to me, in Michael's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Linda, if you're reading this, then everything went wrong. You were never supposed to know the truth, but I can't take all the blame. There are others, bigger than me. I did what I had to do to protect us. If you go to the police, they'll come for you too. Burn this. Forget everything. No signature. Just my name written at the bottom. Linda Turner. I sat there shaking. Was he lying again? Or was this something darker? Something beyond just greed and betrayal? I didn't know. But for the first time in months, I wasn't terrified. I was curious. Not terrified anymore, not even angry, just curious. Because after everything, that letter didn't feel like guilt. It felt like a warning. I read it again, tracing every shaky curve of his handwriting. There are others, bigger than me. That line wouldn't leave my head. What did he mean, others? And why would they come for me? For days, I couldn't focus on anything else. Even in sleep, those words echoed through my dreams, whispers in the dark, a man's voice saying, "You were never supposed to know." And maybe, I realized, I still didn't know everything. The next week, I met Detective Harris again to hand over the letter. She read it slowly, her brow furrowing deeper with every line. "Do you think he's telling the truth?" I asked. She sighed. "Hard to say. Michael's been difficult. He denies most of the charges, but he did mention something about a deal gone bad. We assumed he meant the insurance scam." "Could it be something else?" She looked up. "Like what?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "But whatever it is, I don't think it's over." That night, as I was locking the back door, I noticed something strange. A car parked across the street. Black, tinted windows, engine running. I told myself it was nothing, but when I woke up at 2 a.m. and checked again, it was still there. The next morning, it was gone. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was just paranoid after everything. But that uneasy feeling wouldn't leave me. And then, 2 days later, I found the photo. It was inside my mailbox. No envelope, no note. Just a single photo of me, standing in my kitchen, taken through the window. That was when I realized Michael's others weren't just words. I called Detective Harris immediately. Within an hour, a patrol car was outside, and she was at my door. "Someone's watching you," she said grimly, looking at the photo. "We'll have a unit keep an eye on your house." "But why?" I asked. "Michael's in jail. The case isn't even public." "That's what worries me. Someone wanted you to see this." For the next few days, I barely slept. Every creak, every passing car made my pulse race. But the worst part wasn't fear, it was confusion. If Michael was gone, who could possibly have a reason to come after me? Then, one evening, as I went through the box again, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A small flash drive taped to the bottom of the wooden chest. It was labeled LT, Confidential. My initials. I plugged it into my laptop, heart pounding. A single video file appeared. I clicked it. The screen showed a dimly lit room. Michael sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. The man was tall, wearing a black suit, face half hidden in shadow. "Everything's ready," Michael said in the video. "Once she's gone, you'll get your cut. No mistakes this time." The man nodded. His voice was deep, calm. "Good. Make it clean. No noise. You know what's at stake." Michael hesitated. "What if she finds out?" The man leaned forward. "Then you both disappear." The screen went black. disappear. The word echoed in my mind like a gunshot. I replayed the video 3 times, trying to memorize the man's face, but the lighting made it impossible. Still, something about his voice felt familiar. I just couldn't place it. I called Detective Harris again. When she saw the video, her expression hardened. Whoever this is, he's not just some random partner. He's organized, dangerous, maybe connected to something bigger. Like what? She hesitated. There's been a series of cases like this. Staged accidents, fake insurance claims, offshore accounts. If Michael was part of that network, her words trailed off. I didn't need her to finish. If Michael was part of it, then I had been living inside it, and now they knew I'd seen too much. That night, my house felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I locked every window, every door. But when I turned off the lights, I caught a glimpse of movement outside, a figure at the edge of the driveway, watching. I ducked behind the curtain, my breath shallow. The figure didn't move, just stood there. I reached for my phone, hands shaking, but before I could dial, a voice whispered from outside. "Linda, it's me, Detective Harris." I exhaled shakily and opened the door. Just a crack. She looked tense, eyes darting down the hallway. "We have to go, now." "What? Why?" "They broke into the evidence locker. The video's gone. Someone knew we had it." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from the parking lot, the sound of glass shattering. "Go!" she shouted, grabbing my hand. We ran toward her car, the cold night air cutting through us. As we reached the vehicle, I looked back and saw 2 figures emerging from the shadows, one holding something metallic that glinted in the streetlight. A gun. And that's when I realized this wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Detective Harris slammed her car door, started the engine, and the tires screeched as we shot out of the parking lot. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Streetlights blurred past, and every time a car appeared in the rearview mirror, she gripped the wheel tighter. "Where are we going?" I gasped. "Somewhere safe," she said. "They won't find you tonight." Her tone was steady, but her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I turned toward the window. The motel disappeared behind us, swallowed by darkness. My whole world, every piece of the life I'd built, felt like it was dissolving mile by mile. But even as I sat beside her, a small voice inside me whispered, "Don't trust anyone." We drove for nearly an hour in silence before pulling into a narrow dirt road lined with pine trees. Harris packed behind a rundown cabin. "This is my uncle's place," she said. "No one knows about it. You'll be safe here." The cabin smelled of dust and old wood. She handed me a blanket, poured 2 cups of coffee, and sat across from me at the small kitchen table. "You're shaking," she said softly. "I've been running from my own life. I don't even know what's real anymore." She nodded slowly. "You were married to a man who lived a double life. It's hard to come back from that." Her eyes met mine. Kind, tired, maybe even sad. But there was something else. Something she was hiding behind that calm face. And when she slipped her phone into her jacket pocket, I caught a glimpse of her screen, a message preview that froze my blood. It said, "We have her. What now?" I forced myself to keep still, to pretend I hadn't seen it. My mind was spinning. We have her. Was she talking about me? I managed a small, shaky smile. "Can I use the bathroom?" "Of course," she said. Inside the tiny bathroom, I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked nothing like me. Pale, hollow, terrified. I turned on the faucet to cover the sound, then whispered to myself, "You have to get out." There was a small window above the toilet. I pushed it open slowly, heart hammering. Outside, I could see the trees, a faint road beyond them, and nothing else. I climbed up, squeezing through the narrow frame, and landed hard on the damp ground. My palms were bleeding, but I didn't stop. I ran. And that's when I heard her voice behind me. "Linda!" I froze. Detective Harris stood by the cabin door, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. "Stop. You're not safe out there." "Not safe with you either," I shouted, backing away. "You don't understand," she yelled. "I'm trying to help you." I shook my head. "Then what's the message on your phone?" Her expression faltered. "You saw that?" "What does it mean, Harris? We have her?" She lowered the gun slowly. "It's not what you think. They have your sister, Linda." I froze. "My sister?" "Karen," she said. "We found out this group, the one Michael was working with, took her 2 days ago. They're using her to keep you quiet." My knees gave out. "Oh my God, Karen!" Harris holstered her gun. "I didn't tell you before because I needed to keep you calm, but we can still save her." My fear turned into something else entirely. Resolve. "Tell me what to do," I said. "We traced a phone signal to an old marina outside of Clearwater. That's where they're holding her. If we move now, we can get her before they transfer her." I nodded. "Then let's go." We drove through the night, headlights slicing through the fog. The air smelled like salt and rain. Harris was silent, focused, her jaw set like stone. When we reached the marina, it was almost dawn. The wooden docks creaked under our feet as we moved toward a warehouse at the end of the pier. She motioned for me to stay back and drew her gun. Through a crack in the door, I could see 2 men inside, one tall, one stocky, and a woman tied to a chair. Karen. Her head was bowed, hair matted, face bruised. I bit my lip to keep from crying out. Harris whispered, "Stay here. Wait until I signal." She slipped inside, gun raised. Seconds stretched into forever. Then, a shout, the sound of gunfire. I burst through the door. One man was down, the other running toward the back exit. Harris was bleeding from her arm, but still standing. Karen looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "Linda?" I ran to her, cutting through the ropes. "It's okay, I'm here." She clung to me, sobbing. Then I heard the footsteps behind us. The man who fled had come back, and this time he wasn't alone. And standing beside him was Michael. My breath caught. No, that's not possible. He looked thinner, harder, but those eyes, I knew them anywhere. He smiled faintly. "You really thought I'd rot in a cell forever?" Harris raised her gun. "Don't move." He laughed. "Still playing hero, huh, detective?" "Drop the weapon, Michael." He took a step forward. "You don't understand, Helen. She's the reason this all fell apart. Linda was never supposed to see that message." I stared at him, trembling. "You tried to kill me?" His expression softened, or maybe he was just pretending. "I tried to protect you. You think you know everything, but you don't." "What could you possibly say to make this right?" I asked. He glanced toward Karen. "Ask her." That's when my sister lifted her head and whispered, "He's telling the truth." I froze. "What?" Karen's voice shook. "Linda, it wasn't him who planned it. It was me." The world tilted. "What are you saying?" Tears streamed down her face. "I got involved with them first, the people Michael worked for. I was in debt, desperate. He tried to help me. The money, the life insurance, all of it. He thought it was to save me, but they turned it into something else." Michael stepped closer. "I told you, Linda. I never meant to hurt you. I was trying to fix her mess." My knees went weak. Everything, the lies, the fear, the letter, suddenly looked different in the harsh light of truth. But before I could speak, another shot rang out. Michael staggered backward, clutching his chest. Harris stood behind him, gun smoking. She said, "He was reaching for the trigger," breathing hard. Michael fell to the floor, eyes wide. "Linda," he whispered, "I was sorry." And then he was gone. The room went silent except for the sound of the sea outside. I knelt beside him, numb. I didn't know whether to hate him or mourn him. Maybe both. Karen wept quietly behind me. Harris called for backup, her voice steady but her hands trembling. When it was finally over, the sun was rising, pale and cold over the water. But even then, I knew this story wasn't ending with Michael's death, because the message he'd left me, "There are others bigger than me," still lingered. And somewhere out there, those people were still watching. The police sirens echoed down the empty docks as the sun climbed higher over the horizon. I stood there, numb, my hands shaking, Michael's blood still warm on my skin. Detective Harris was speaking to the responding officers, but her voice sounded far away, like I was underwater. Karen sat on the steps, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her. She looked fragile, smaller somehow, as if the truth had drained all the strength from her. When I finally found the courage to walk toward her, she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. She shook her head slowly. "You wouldn't have understood. Try me." She looked up, and the guilt in her eyes broke something inside me. "It started 5 years ago," she said. "After Mark left, I had nothing. No money, no job, no one to help. These people approached me through a friend. They offered quick cash if I helped them set up fake insurance claims. At first, it was harmless. Then they wanted more. Real people, real deaths." My stomach turned. "Oh God, Karen." "I wanted out," she said, her voice trembling. "But by then, they had everything on me. Recordings, signatures, photos. I was trapped. Michael found out and he thought he could fix it by setting up that policy in your name. He thought if he faked your death, they'd erase my debt. He never planned to go through with it. But someone else did." "Then who?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "The man you saw in that video, the one Michael met, his name's Richard Kale. He runs the entire network. He's ruthless, the kind of man who doesn't forgive mistakes." I stared out toward the sea, waves slapping against the pier. "So when Michael said there were others, he meant Richard," Karen finished softly. Detective Harris joined us. "We'll get him," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Can you really?" I asked. She sighed. "Men like that don't leave fingerprints. They hide behind shell companies, offshore accounts, politicians, but we'll try." Later that day, they took us both to the station for statements. The whole thing felt surreal. The sterile smell, the buzzing lights, the endless questions. I answered everything as best as I could, but my mind kept drifting to that video. That man in the shadows. When they finally let us go, I drove Karen to my house. For a long time, we sat in silence at the kitchen table. The same kitchen where my marriage had unraveled. She looked around and whispered, "You should sell this place." I smiled faintly. "You sound like Michael." Her face fell, and I regretted saying it immediately. "I'm sorry," I said softly. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "You have every right to hate me." "I don't," I said after a pause. "I hate what this did to us, but not you." She began to cry quietly, and I pulled her into my arms. For the first time in months, I let myself cry too. But healing was a luxury I wouldn't get for long. A week later, I got a call from Detective Harris. She said, "We found something. A name. Or at least part of one. There's a warehouse listed under a dummy company linked to Richard Kale. I'm heading there tonight. Do you want me to come?" "No," she said quickly. "Stay with your sister. If this goes wrong, you'll both be targets again." But something in her tone told me she was scared. I couldn't just sit at home.
So a few hours later, I drove to the address she'd sent, an old textile warehouse on the outskirts of town. The parking lot was empty except for one car, her black sedan. The door was ajar. I stepped inside quietly, the air thick with dust and oil. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness and then landed on her badge, lying on the floor. "Helen?" I whispered. No answer. Then I saw her, tied to a chair, blood on her sleeve. "Helen!" I rushed forward, untying her hands. "What happened?" She looked up weakly. "It was a trap. They knew I'd come." "Where are they now?" Her lips trembled. "Behind you." I turned and found myself staring into the cold, sharp eyes of Richard Cale. He looked exactly like I remembered from the video. Tall, composed, wearing a dark suit that didn't belong in a place like this. "Mrs. Taylor," he said smoothly, "you've been a very difficult woman to find." I swallowed hard. "You're Richard." He smiled faintly. "I am, though I wish we'd met under better circumstances." "What do you want?" He gestured toward Harris. "You shouldn't have gotten involved. You should have taken the insurance payout, disappeared quietly. Now everyone's paying the price." "I'm not afraid of you," I said, though my voice betrayed me. "You should be," he said, "because everything you think you know is just the surface. Your husband, your sister, they were pawns. You were the leverage." "The leverage for what?" He leaned closer, his cologne heavy and sharp. "Your father left behind something valuable before he died, a set of documents that could destroy people like me. And your husband thought he could trade your life for those papers." I stared at him, stunned. "My father? He was a carpenter, not some secret agent." Richard's eyes glittered. "He wasn't as simple as you believed." And with that, the ground shifted again. The story wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about legacy. Before I could speak, headlights flashed through the warehouse windows. Police sirens wailed. He cursed, yanked a gun from his jacket and fired once, a shot that shattered a nearby crate. I ducked, dragging Harris behind me. When I looked up again, Richard was gone. The officers stormed in seconds later, but it was too late. He had vanished into the dark. Harris was rushed to the hospital. I gave my statement again, every detail of his face, his words, his voice. They told me it might take months to track him down, maybe years. But I knew something they didn't. Richard wasn't finished, and he'd be back. Because 3 days later, I received another envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photograph. My father, standing beside Richard, smiling. On the back, a message written in that same sharp hand. "Some stories begin long before you realize you're in them." The photo of my father and Richard Cale lay on the table in front of me like a ghost that refused to fade. For days, I couldn't touch it, couldn't look at it for more than a few seconds. I just sat there, wondering how many parts of my life had been built on secrets I never even knew existed. My father, the man who'd taught me how to build a birdhouse, how to drive, how to tell the truth, had been standing beside a monster and smiling. I finally gathered the courage to flip the photo again. On the back, below the message, there were faint numbers written in pencil. 47-B, Harper Mill, 1984. It wasn't an address I recognized, but it felt like a breadcrumb. Maybe my father had left something there. Maybe that's what Richard was still hunting. And maybe, if I found it first, I could end this for good. The next morning, I packed a small bag and drove out to Harper Mill, an old industrial town, about an hour north. The mill had been closed for decades. The sign out front was cracked, half buried in weeds. Inside, dust swirled in the sunlight and the air smelled like rust and forgotten time. I searched every corner, every drawer, until I found it. A small metal box hidden behind a loose brick near the boiler room. Inside were two things: a faded photo of my father in a military uniform and a notebook. The notebook was old, its pages yellow and brittle. On the first page, he had written, "If you're reading this, then the past has found you too." My breath caught. It was his handwriting, the same looping letters I remembered from birthday cards. I sat on the cold floor and began to read. He wrote about the years before I was born, how he had worked as a contractor for a private security firm that didn't just guard buildings, but moved information. He mentioned a man named Richard Cale, his supervisor. But over time, my father discovered they weren't just moving data, they were blackmailing people, selling secrets, ruining lives. He tried to expose them. Instead, they framed him, forced him to silence. He wrote, "One day they'll come for you too. Not because of what you've done, but because of what I couldn't destroy." On the last page, he'd drawn a rough map, the outline of a lake and a small cabin marked with an X. Beneath it, a single line: "Truth sleeps beneath the water."
I didn't know what it meant, but I knew where to go. Lake Stanton was only 20 miles away. The cabin was still there, half collapsed under the weight of years. When I opened the door, the smell of mold and pine hit me. Inside, the floorboards groaned under my feet. There, in the center of the room, was a trapdoor. I knelt and pried it open. A set of wooden steps led down into the dark. At the bottom, sealed in plastic, was a single metal case. When I opened it, I found stacks of papers, tapes, and ledgers. Evidence. Names of politicians, executives, offshore accounts. Everything my father had risked his life to hide. And Richard Cale's name was everywhere. My hands trembled as I realized what this was: the truth beneath the water. It could destroy Richard. It could end this nightmare. I took photos of everything, then called Detective Harris. She arrived an hour later, still pale from the wound on her arm, but determined. When she saw what I'd found, her eyes widened. "Linda, this is enough to bring the whole network down. Then do it. End this." She smiled faintly. "We will, because of you." For the first time, I felt a strange sense of peace, like the storm that had ripped through my life was finally passing. But even peace can hurt. A week later, the FBI raided Richard's properties. His name hit the news. Financial kingpin arrested after anonymous tip. They didn't mention me, and I was grateful. I didn't need credit. I just needed quiet. Karen was recovering, slowly. Some nights she still woke up crying, but we were together again. We'd lost so much: Michael, our parents, the illusion of safety, but somehow through the wreckage, we'd found each other again. We sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset. Karen whispered, "Do you ever think you'll forgive him?" "Michael?" I said. She nodded. I took a long breath. "Maybe not today, but one day. Because if I don't, I'll carry him forever." She smiled sadly. "You sound like Dad." I looked out at the fading light. Maybe I finally understand him. The days grew quieter. I planted a small garden behind the house. Harris called sometimes to update me. Trials, confessions, the slow unspooling of everything Richard had built. Each time she called, her voice sounded lighter. One evening she said, "You know, Linda, most people would have run, but you stood up. You didn't let the darkness win." I smiled softly. I didn't do it alone. And that's the truth of it, isn't it? None of us ever face the storm alone. We just forget who's still holding the umbrella. Months later, I drove back to Lake Stanton one last time. The cabin was gone, torn down by the county. I stood by the water, wind brushing through the trees, and whispered to the memory of my father, to Michael, to everyone I'd lost, "I forgive you." Then I let the photo fall into the lake. It drifted for a moment before sinking slowly beneath the surface, back where it belonged. As the ripples faded, I finally felt free.